The late autumn sun cast long, skeletal shadows across the schoolyard in Red Creek, Montana. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of dry leaves and distant wood smoke. Recess was a familiar, chaotic symphony of shouts and laughter, but for 11-year-old Lily, it was a time for observation. She usually sat on the worn wooden bench near the chain-link fence that separated the manicured grounds of the elementary school from the wild, untamed expanse that rolled towards the reservation. From there, she watched the world, and most days she watched him. His name was Kai. He was a year older, but in the silent, self-imposed segregation of the playground, he might as well have been from another planet. The other kids from the reservation kept to their own tight-knit groups, but Kai was always alone. He'd sit by the fence line, far from the swings and the basketball court, with a small, battered shoebox on his lap. Lily knew what was inside. She'd seen the twitching whiskers and the beady, intelligent eyes of a brown and white pet rat he called Chayton. Today, however, was different. Kai wasn't stroking his companion or whispering to it. He was perfectly still, his small shoulders hunched forward, his gaze fixed on the motionless contents of the box. The usual vibrant energy of recess felt miles away, muted by the bubble of profound stillness surrounding the boy. A cold knot of dread tightened in Lily's stomach. She knew that kind of stillness. She'd felt it herself 2 years ago when her golden retriever, Buddy, had not woken up from his sleep. Ignoring the curious glances of her friends, Lily slid off the bench and walked across the dusty field. The crunch of her sneakers on the dry earth seemed unnervingly loud. As she drew closer, she could see the reason for his sorrow. Chayton was lying on its side, a tiny, perfect form devoid of life. Kai didn't look up as she approached, but she saw a single, silent tear carve a clean path through the dust on his cheek. She stopped beside him, her own throat tight. Words felt clumsy and inadequate. "I'm sorry," she whispered, the phrase feeling like a hollow echo of what she truly wanted to convey. He didn't answer, just gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. Lily looked from the dead rat to the bleakness of the cardboard box. "He deserves better than a box," she said softly, more to herself than to him. "He needs a proper resting place." For the first time, Kai lifted his head, his dark, solemn eyes meeting hers. They were filled with a grief, so deep it startled her. He looked towards a solitary, gnarled cottonwood tree that stood just beyond the school's boundary. Lily understood. Without another word, they slipped through a gap in the fence. Using a flat rock and their bare hands, they dug a small, respectful grave in the hard-packed earth at the base of the tree. Lily gently took the shoebox and tipped the small body into the hole. After they covered it with soil, she found a few stubborn purple asters growing nearby and laid them on the fresh mound. The piercing shriek of the school bell shattered their shared silence. Kai placed a hand on the tiny grave for a moment, then turned and walked away, not back towards the school, but down the dusty road leading out of town, leaving Lily alone with the echo of their quiet farewell. The next morning, the Montana sky was a vast, unforgiving blue. A crisp chill clung to the air, the kind that promised the lingering grip of winter wasn't ready to yield to spring. Lily walked her usual route to school, her backpack feeling a little heavier, her thoughts still circling back to the quiet boy and the small, makeshift grave under the cottonwood tree. The silence of yesterday seemed to have seeped into the town itself. There were fewer cars on the road, fewer people tending to their yards. An unsettling stillness had settled over Red Creek. She turned the final corner onto the street where the school stood, and she stopped dead. Her breath caught in her throat, forming a small, white cloud in the cold air. The scene before her was surreal, like something from a movie, not her sleepy little town. Red Creek Elementary was surrounded. Standing in a wide, silent perimeter that encompassed the entire school grounds were men. Hundreds of them. They were Native American, men from Kai's reservation. They stood a few feet apart from one another, forming an unbroken human chain. Some wore modern clothes, denim jackets, work boots, flannel shirts, while others had more traditional elements woven into their attire, beaded accents, a leather vest, long hair tied back with simple cords. But their clothing didn't matter. It was their posture, their presence. They stood ramrod straight, their faces stoic, their eyes fixed on the school. They weren't shouting, they weren't holding signs, they weren't armed. They were just there. A silent, unmovable wall of humanity. Lights were on inside the school. Lily could see the terrified faces of her classmates and teachers pressed against the windows. Mrs. Davison, her fourth-grade teacher, was trying to shepherd kids away from the glass. Principal Thompson was visible in his office, his face pale as he spoke frantically into a phone. Sheriff Brody's single patrol car was parked 100 yards away, its lights off. The sheriff himself stood beside it, arms crossed, looking utterly overwhelmed and out of his depth. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Lily. Her first instinct was to run, to hide, but her feet felt rooted to the pavement. Her eyes scanned the silent ranks, searching for a sign, an explanation. Then, her gaze drifted past the school, beyond the chain-link fence, to the lone cottonwood tree on the edge of the field. The small patch of disturbed earth at its base was barely visible from here, but Lily knew it was there. Her heart hammered against her ribs. This couldn't be a coincidence. The men, the silence, Kai, the burial. A sick, terrifying realization washed over her. This was because of her. Her simple act of kindness, of sharing a moment of grief with a lonely boy, had somehow summoned this silent, intimidating army. She didn't understand how or why, but she knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she was standing at the epicenter of it all. As that thought solidified, one of the warriors, a tall man with streaks of gray in his braided hair, slowly turned his head. His dark eyes met hers, not with anger, but with an intense, unreadable gravity that seemed to pull all the air from her lungs. The world seemed to shrink to the space between Lily and the warrior. His gaze wasn't hostile, but it was heavy, filled with an intensity that rooted her to the spot. Her sneakers felt glued to the cracked pavement. Behind him, the silent ranks of men were like a forest of statues, their presence a physical weight on the air. The police officers behind their car doors, the teachers frozen on the school steps, everyone was watching, holding their breath. The warrior took a slow, deliberate step forward, then another. The only sounds were the distant chirp of a bird and the frantic thumping of Lily's own heart. He stopped just a few feet from her, his shadow falling over her small frame. He was even taller up close, his face a roadmap of lines etched by the sun and wind. He said nothing, simply continuing to watch her with those dark, unreadable eyes. Just as Lily thought she might faint from the tension, a new figure emerged from the line of warriors. This man was older, his long, graying hair braided with leather and a single feather. He moved with a quiet authority that commanded more respect than any weapon could. He walked past the younger warrior and stopped before Lily, his expression softer, though no less serious. Beside him, a small shape detached from the crowd and Lily's breath hitched. It was Kai. The boy wouldn't meet her eyes, instead staring at the scuffed toes of his own shoes, but his presence was a small anchor in the overwhelming sea of confusion. The elder placed a gentle hand on Kai's shoulder before addressing Lily. His voice was low and resonant, like the rumble of distant thunder, yet it carried clearly in the unnerving silence. "You are the girl who helped my son," he said. It wasn't a question. Lily could only manage a tiny, jerky nod, her throat too tight for words. "My name is Aikshetta," the man continued. "Kai is my son. We are not here to cause fear." He glanced at the school, at the pale, frightened faces in the windows, and a flicker of something, perhaps regret, crossed his face. "But our ways are not your ways. Our silence is not a threat. It is our highest sign of respect." Lily stared, uncomprehending. "Respect? For what?" she finally managed to whisper. Aikshetta's gaze softened. "For what you did for Chaitin, and for my son." He gestured to Kai. Chaitin was not just a pet. He was a gift to Kai from his grandfather, who walks in the spirit world now. He was a small, quiet companion for a small, quiet boy. To bury him with care, with a good heart, is to honor the spirit of the animal and the memory of the one who gave him. He looked directly into Lily's eyes. "You did not laugh. You did not mock his grief. You shared it." An outsider showed more understanding than many of our own people might have. An act of pure kindness from a child is a powerful thing. It is a message. Our people, we came to honor that message, to stand in silent thanks for the respect you showed one of ours. Kai finally looked up at Lily, his expression a mixture of shyness and gratitude. "Thank you," he murmured, so quietly she almost didn't hear it. The terror that had been squeezing Lily's chest began to dissolve, replaced by a profound, dizzying sense of awe. This army of silent men, this terrifying spectacle, wasn't about anger or revenge. It was a thank you card, written in a language she never knew existed. Aikshada's voice, though calm, had the gravity of a mountain. It settled over the schoolyard, silencing not just the whispers of the adults, but the very hum of fear that had electrified the air. The hundreds of warriors remained motionless, their silence now transformed from a threat into a powerful, humbling testament. Lily looked at the weathered lines on Aikshada's face, then at the stoic figures ringing the school, and for the first time, she saw them not as an invading force, but as a silent chorus bearing witness. Sheriff Brody, who had been standing with his hand hovering instinctively over his sidearm, slowly let his arm drop to his side. He exhaled a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, the tension draining from his shoulders. He looked from Aikshada to Lily, a flicker of disbelief giving way to a grudging respect. "Well, I'll be," he muttered under his breath, shaking his head slightly. The school doors creaked open. Mrs. Davison, Lily's teacher, emerged cautiously, followed by the principal, Mr. Harris. Their faces, once pale with alarm, were now etched with profound confusion and awe. They saw Lily, their small, quiet student, standing at the epicenter of this incredible event, looking not terrified, but serene. From the corner of her eye, Lily saw Kai step out from behind his father. He didn't speak, but he met her gaze and gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. It was a simple gesture, yet it carried the weight of their shared secret under the cottonwood tree, now laid bare for the entire town to see. Aikshada turned his attention back to Lily, his dark eyes gentle. "A heart that shows kindness to the small and forgotten is a heart that holds great strength," he said, his voice for her alone. "Our people do not let such strength go unseen. We would be honored if you and your family would join us at our home, to share a meal, to let us thank you in the proper way." The invitation was so unexpected, so formal, that Lily was speechless. She was just a girl who had felt sad for a boy and his rat. She didn't feel strong or honorable. She felt small, caught in the middle of something far bigger than herself. Just then, the squeal of tires cut through the quiet reverence. A dusty sedan skidded to a stop by the curb, and Lily's mother, Sarah, burst out, her face a mask of panic. "Lily, oh my God, Lily," she cried, running toward the schoolyard. She froze a few feet away, her eyes wide as she took in the impossible scene. Her daughter standing between a tribal elder and the town sheriff, surrounded by silent warriors. "It's okay, Mom," Lily said, her voice small but steady. Aikshada turned to Sarah with the same unshakable calm. "Your daughter is safe, ma'am," he explained patiently. "She has shown my son and my people a great kindness. We are here only to show our gratitude." Sheriff Brody stepped forward, putting a reassuring hand on Sarah's arm. "It's all right, Sarah. There's been a misunderstanding. A cultural one, everything is fine." As Aikshada spoke, a quiet ripple went through the line of warriors. As one, they turned and began to walk away, their movements fluid and silent, melting back toward the hills from which they came. The display was over. The schoolyard, once a stage for a tense standoff, was now just a quiet space between two worlds. Lily stood beside her stunned mother, looking at Aikshada and Kai, realizing this was not an ending, but the beginning of a path she never knew she would have to walk. The drive to the reservation was quiet, the hum of their old sedan's engine filling the space between her parents' anxious glances. Lily stared out the window, watching the familiar pines of Red Creek thin out, replaced by the vast, open expanse of the high plains under a boundless Montana sky. Her stomach was a flutter of hummingbirds, a mix of nervous energy and raw curiosity. She clutched the smooth, gray stone from the burial site in her pocket, its weight a small anchor in a sea of uncertainty. The turnoff was marked by a simple wooden sign, weathered by sun and wind. As they drove down the gravel road, the reservation unfolded not as a monolith of tradition, but as a living, breathing community. Modest houses dotted the landscape, some with satellite dishes glinting in the sun and pickup trucks parked in the driveways, others with vibrant vegetable gardens and clotheslines dancing with laundry. The air smelled different here of dust, sweetgrass, and the faint, comforting scent of wood smoke. Aikshetta and Kai were waiting for them outside a simple, well-kept home with a porch swing. Lily's breath caught. Kai wasn't the silent, hunched-over boy from the schoolyard. Here, in his own space, his shoulders were relaxed. He wore jeans and a t-shirt, but a finely beaded bracelet circled his wrist, catching the light. When he saw Lily, a faint, shy smile touched his lips as he met her gaze, a silent acknowledgement that felt louder than any words spoken between them before. "Welcome," Aikshetta said, his voice as calm and steady as the hills around them. He extended a hand first to Lily's father, then her mother. "We are honored to have you in our home." Inside, the house was warm and filled with a quiet dignity. Woven blankets with geometric patterns were draped over the furniture, and framed photos of family, smiling children, proud elders, Kai as a small boy on a pony, adorned the walls. Kai led Lily to a small table in the corner, his earlier shyness returning slightly. On it were several small, exquisitely carved wooden animals. He picked up a figure of a rat, its form so detailed she could almost see the whiskers twitch. "Chaitan," he said softly, his first word to her. He pointed to the carving, then looked at her. "It's beautiful," Lily whispered, her heart aching with a shared sense of loss and understanding. Before they sat down to eat a meal of rich stew and warm fry bread, Aikshetta approached Lily. "A gift is given for a gift received," he said, placing a small, soft leather pouch in her hands. It was decorated with intricate beadwork in the shape of a cottonwood leaf. "So you remember that a small seed of kindness can grow a great tree of friendship." Lily looked from the pouch to Kai, who gave her a small, definitive nod. The nervousness had vanished completely, replaced by a profound warmth that had nothing to do with the wood stove in the corner. It was the feeling of connection, of being seen and understood across a divide she never even knew she had the power to cross. The Monday after the visit to the reservation felt both ordinary and surreal. The familiar drone of the school bell, the scuffed linoleum floors, the scent of chalk dust. It was all the same, yet Lily felt as if she were seeing it through a new lens. The world she had always known seemed smaller, its edges now softened by the awareness of a different world just a few miles away, one filled with the scent of sage and wood smoke. Tucked safely in her pocket, the beaded leather pouch Aikshetta had given her felt like a warm stone, a tangible anchor to the weekend's profound events. She saw Kai near the water fountains before first period. He was alone, as usual, but his solitude no longer seemed sad to her. It looked peaceful. For a moment, she hesitated, the old social boundaries of the schoolyard rising like an invisible wall. But then he looked up, and his dark eyes met hers. There was no grand gesture, no spoken word. He simply gave her a small, slow nod. It was a gesture of acknowledgement, of shared understanding. Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest and nodded back, a faint smile touching her lips. The invisible wall crumbled into dust. Their friendship wasn't loud or public, but it was real, sealed in that quiet, mutual recognition. Her best friend, Emily, was not so quiet. She cornered Lily by the lockers, her eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and envy. "So, tell me everything. What was it like? Are their houses really made of wood? Did you eat weird food?" The questions tumbled out, one after another. "Is he your boyfriend now?" she added with a giggle, poking Lily in the ribs. Lily struggled to find the right words. How could she explain the calm dignity of Aikshetta or the comfortable silence in Kai's home? "It was nice, Emily," she said, her voice softer than intended. They were just normal. His dad is really kind, and their house was warm. The explanation felt woefully inadequate. It couldn't capture the feeling of being welcomed, the weight of a history she was just beginning to understand. Emily's face fell slightly, her curiosity unsatisfied. "Oh, okay," she said, clearly expecting a more dramatic tale. Lily realized then that some experiences couldn't be translated, they had to be lived. The rest of the day passed in a haze of quiet reflection. During history class, as Mr. Davison spoke about the founding of Red Creek, Lily found her gaze drifting out the window toward the distant hills. For the first time, she wondered about the stories that weren't in their textbooks, the history that lived in people like Kai and Aikshetta. Her small act of kindness had been a key, unlocking a door she never knew existed. Her life was no longer just about Red Creek. It was bigger now, filled with new questions and a friendship that didn't need words to be understood. Months had passed, bleeding the fiery colors of autumn into the stark, quiet white of a Montana winter. The air in Red Creek now carried a sharp, clean chill, and the cottonwood tree on the hill stood as a skeletal silhouette against the pale afternoon sky. The fear that had once gripped the town felt like a distant memory, a strange dream that had faded with the morning sun. After school, Lily and Kai sat on a cold stone bench near the public library, their history project spread between them. A gust of wind rustled the pages of their textbook, and Lily instinctively weighed it down with her elbow. She tapped a faded photograph of the original town settlement. "The book says the founders chose this spot because of the creek," she said, her breath fogging in the air. It was a fresh start. Kai was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on the distant line of the mountains. He gently traced a path on the map with his finger, a path that followed the water, not the roads. "My father says it was never a start," he replied, his voice soft but clear. It was just a new chapter in a story that was already here. The creek didn't belong to them, it was just where they stopped. Lily looked at him, really looked at him. The guarded, silent boy from the beginning of the school year was gone. In his place was a friend, someone whose quietness was no longer a wall, but a space of comfortable understanding. She pulled a pencil from the beaded leather pouch Aikshetta had given her, its intricate design a familiar comfort in her hand. The pouch went everywhere with her now. As they worked, a group of their classmates walked past, their laughter echoing in the cold air. Mark, a boy who had been one of the most vocal in his fear that day, paused. "Hey, Lily." "Hey, Kai," he said with a simple nod, before jogging to catch up with his friends. There was no teasing, no suspicion, just acceptance. It was a small moment, but it felt monumental. A short while later, Sheriff Brody's patrol car drove slowly down the street. He saw the two of them on the bench, and a small, genuine smile touched his lips. He gave them a brief wave, a gesture of quiet approval, before continuing on his rounds. The invisible line that had once divided Red Creek was dissolving, stitched together by small, everyday interactions just like this. When the light began to fail, they packed their things. They walked together in a familiar silence, parting ways at the corner where Kai's path led back toward the reservation and Lily's toward her home in town. Before turning, Lily glanced back at the hill. The cottonwood tree stood strong and patient, its roots holding fast to the earth, connecting the past to the present. She finally understood. The honor her act had received wasn't just for burying a small creature. It was for seeing a person, for crossing a fence without thinking of it as a barrier. The silence that had once terrified her school was the same peaceful silence she now shared with her friend. It wasn't an ending or a beginning. It was just life, continuing on, a little kinder and a lot more connected than it had been before.